My name is Jerm. This is Jerm Warfare, the battle of ideas. Todd, I love your latest Substack. It really pulled on my heartstrings. Creativity's dead. It's something that I have been...
the one that just came out this morning.
It's something I've been thinking about for a very long time. Somebody who... I believe myself to be creative. In many ways, I think most people are creative. I think it's a human... characteristic. I think it's part of being human. We have the ability to create. In many ways, animals don't. They just
they don't. They don't the way we do. No.
They just act instinctively.
Right. They appear to be creative. I love it when you see, like the whole stupid thing with the elephants painting pictures and crap like that, and even natural instinctual stuff like building nests. And the complexity that some fish, create the same. They now I don't know this because I'm not in a fish brain, but I don't think they're being creative.
No, I don't.
They're just doing what they're.
I don't think that's creative. I think that's just how they're wired to survive.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But
that's the difference. Yeah.
Yes, when we speak about creativity, we're talking about something that is fun. It doesn't act as a survival mechanism. Playing guitar or drawing a picture or whatever, or taking a beautiful photograph, that's creativity, and it doesn't in any way aid in our survival, which is what animals do.
No, that's an interesting distinction to make. I think there's a lot of creative things we do that are related to our survival, like anybody that has a profession that's creative. But the impulse to be creative, even if you're an accountant, balancing a ledger, there's a creativity in that. It's like a passionate satisfaction in moving things around and manipulating matter. I mean, if you really reduce it down to that. And you can't really define it. I mean, you can in really, really broad strokes, and you can define, say, if you're an artist or a musician, you can say what you just said. It's not instinctive. It's not based on an action in order to survive. And it makes something that essentially is useless. It doesn't have any pragmatic use. But I think that's the broad definition of it. I think it comes down to anything that we do that our heart is in, and if that happens to be being an accountant or any other activity that seems to be very, very far away from being an artist, I still think that's creative. And that's what we're losing, or we're going to lose. We'll lose the obvious creativity first, which I think we've lost quite a bit of that, or at least the importance of it in our everyday life. I see clients all the time, and most of my clients have no creative outlet in their life. They have nothing they do that's... Now, you just, did you say something? Because I can't hear you now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had my mic on mute.
Okay.
My question is, why? Why is creativity dead?
Well, that's a big one. I mean, you read the article, so you kind of get some idea of it. I think what we're experiencing now, that anything that diminishes our humanness, our humanity, I think is driven by an intentional agenda to control people. I know that sounds very, the old typical paranoia, but yeah, it just makes more sense. I don't know if people get together in a room and say, "Oh, let's do this," but it's like the whole drive to destroy the family, to destroy religion and spirituality, to make people material consumers. All of that all fits into the same kind of box. And creativity is part of that. It's one of the, just like you said to start with, it's one of the most important human elements of being a human, is this concept of creativity, going all the way from art all the way to the accountant example. It's like anything that is driven by your passion and driven by your heart, I guess is a easier way to say it, as opposed to the intellect, and also as opposed to the material satisfaction of the senses, which is where we get into things like instant gratification and material consumption, which is the mantra of the current humanness, is to protect the body, to be terrified of anything that could damage it or hurt it or kill it, and to only consume, to take in acquisitions, to buy stuff, to whatever. And that is devoid of this creative output of expression. It's all the other way. It's all a one-way street in, or pushing things away that could hurt you and to keep you safe.
Is that what you mean when you speak about the dangers of what was it? What was the term you used? Passive self-entertainment.
Yeah, the self-entertainment thing is interesting because it has where it's dangerous is when it's out of balance, because self-entertainment can be creative, but I think it's still, most self-entertainment is focused on the senses, is focused on bringing a surface level encounter with the world. It's not deep. It doesn't have any depth to it. It's go out and have fun. The whole Roman circus and bread thing. It's just to, and we see this really, really clearly in the culture. It's like nobody, or not nobody, but very few people I know are interested in the arts. They're not interested in going to see a ballet or a symphony orchestra play or going to the art gallery and looking at art. They're only interested in music if it's entertaining, if they can dance to it or whatever. I mean, it's not a deeper awareness. Now, I'm not saying that that's bad entirely. I mean, it isn't. I think that having fun and satisfying the senses and all that is part of being a human. No question. It's just when that's essentially the focus is where it runs into trouble. In my humble opinion,
but
Mr. Expert.
Okay, but now, I mean, historically, humans have always wanted self-gratification. We've always wanted a bit of fun. So, I mean, one of the tugs of war, I think is the plural, that I've had
like
multiple times.
Bitches.
Yes. That I've had over multiple times over the years is the term bread and circuses gets thrown around. And I sometimes think that people throw it around too easily, because to be human also means to switch off.
Absolutely.
You need to switch off. You need to be able to just sit down for 2 hours and enjoy a sports game or the theater or something that is completely disconnected from everything around you.
Yeah, if it was the other way around, I'd be complaining about it. It's all about balance. I remember reading a million years ago, I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Millman. He's famous for The Peaceful Warrior. He was a really hardcore athlete, a gymnast, and was in a motorcycle accident, I think, and essentially broke him to pieces. And he worked his way back, and I think actually performed in the Olympics, which was his dream. But anyway, his whole, one of the things he said that really struck me is he said that there's three basic, very fundamental things that we're driven toward that drive us. One is spirit, one is the body, and the other is the intellect. And if they're in balance, we're good. But the thing that he said that really struck me, I hope he said this because somebody's going to say, no, he never said that, but I'm pretty sure because I was reading his book, that he said that they're all three in competition with each other, that each one of these things is going to want to be the dominant. The intellect wants to be the dominant, the spirit does, the body does. And so you have to, as your overall arching self, you have to regulate those three things yourself. Because if you let any one of them take over, they will take over. So you will no longer be fully integrated, as Carl Jung would say, or individuated or self-actualized, whatever words you want to use. And Jung was really big on that. He had this idea of inferior and superior function. And he would say that we all have a natural superior function. Say it's the intellect, say it's being an athlete, say it's any number or an artist, whatever, that's our superior function. And that if we identify that, then we should do work on also feeding the inferior function in order to pull it up so it's closer to being in balance. You'll never get it as high as your superior function, but the point is to focus on that. So if you're an intellect or an artistic nerd or whatever and just go to the museum and whatnot, you should be encouraged, or you should encourage yourself to go out and party and go have a good time and do something just for the senses. I think the problem, obviously, is that we're much more weighted as a culture toward that. And I think it's intentional, me, Mr. Conspiracy theorist and paranoid and whatever. But when you look at it and you wonder about things like this, you like it, just like what Mark was saying in Mark McDonald in the interview you had with him. And I can't remember the terms he used, but you came up with the word organic, which is the word I use all the time, that we are not organically moving through, that we are told how to be as a culture, that it's not natural what's happening. And I think that's very, very true. And I think that's where the problem comes in, is that we're being fed this manipulative kind of indoctrination into being, supple and easily manipulated and adapted. And part of that is to pull away any of the deeper creative expressions, to just have it be consuming and be materialist. And, rather than look at a metaphysical aspect to reality. And because that is discouraged. In fact, I just wrote an article on that. It hasn't come out yet, but that's being discouraged in every way possible that you see is any kind of metaphysic belief in luck and, positive thinking and Jesus. And, it's just constantly, you're just told, well, you're an idiot or that's stupid. And, it's also dangerous now to be, say, a Christian. That is considered dangerous. It's like anything in the culture that's talked about that is Christian is considered by the left as being a derogatory, negative aspect of the culture.
Which means that we need to encourage Christianity. People need to become believers again and become counterculture. I mean, that's the new anti-establishment.
Are you being flippant?
Well, yeah, sure. Right. In a way, I am, but I actually am being serious, because so I was driving in the car with my wife not too long ago, and she asked me if I think the decline of society, just culturally, morally, this devolution into degeneracy and the celebration of everything that is wrong, is connected to the rise of atheism.
Absolutely, 100%. Smart woman. I mean, more so. That is more important than just about anything you could say, because I think that is the reason. This pull away from metaphysics and push toward materialism, all of that, I believe, is a result of the secularization of the culture. And pick a religion. I think Christianity is probably, at least to me, and maybe to a lot of Westerners, is one that makes the most sense in its very broad stroke, kind of fundamental level of love and forgiveness and those things. I mean, the dogma of any religion is wiggy. I mean, you've got to work around that. If you're a literalist, a fundamentalist from the Bible or whatever, there's issues around that. But that's what Christianity teaches. Judaism is similar. Hinduism is interesting only because it's essentially the same. I mean, I don't know that much about it, but hard to say. I think I'm not going to talk about Islam because I don't know that much about it, but I do know a little bit about Sufism, and Sufism is a beautiful concept. Certainly Buddhism is. So, I mean, anything that believes in something other than materialism. I mean, that's basically what it is.
But that is part of creativity. We as humans, whether it's true or not is irrelevant. We as humans created that meaning, that purpose, that reason to wake up in the morning. We spoke about this in our storytelling conversation. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, since humans, and I'm one of them, has a tendency to want to reduce things down to fundamentals. But the fundamental thing is that materialism is not the end all of reality. And when you believe it is, you become incredibly restricted into what has meaning to you in life. And, that's where we get into religion, because religion or spirituality or whatever does not believe that the material cause and effect universe of particles bouncing on one another in a relatively arbitrary way is the end all. And I think that is the source of all of the problems. And if you look at certainly Christianity and Judaism as well from the Old Testament, but if you look at the fundamental, like the Ten Commandments, for instance, it's like they're basic truths that if you follow, you more than likely will not go completely off grid. They're very simplistic, so you could say, well, I want a more sophisticated way of seeing the world. You certainly can do that, as we've done. And that's part of the reason why we get into trouble, is because we keep trying to give it a cause and effect meaning to it. We'll prove that God exists. It's like, well, what is proof?
Yeah, but you don't need to prove that God exists, because you believe in something through the mechanism of faith. So
yes, that's right. But when you use the word believe, or prove, which is what everybody does, is that you're talking about proving it based on the scientific method, which is a cause and effect system.
But it's silly. And Richard Dawkins, who you noted, is part of this kind of reductionist problem.
Yeah. It's not, proving is not only defined by the scientific method, which is repeatability,
but it's materialistic.
Same results. It's totally materialistic. Yeah.
So, I mean, going back to the comment about atheism, because I know that there are many atheists that listen to my show. It's not that
that there are many atheists that listen to your show?
For sure. But it's not that atheists are necessarily bad people, Todd. They're not necessarily. I'm not saying that individual atheists are bad people. I'm saying that
bad. No.
Yeah.
Bad.
No, I'm saying that atheism as a philosophical system, as a framework, it can't coherently explain why anything perhaps is wrong.
Yeah, but you'd have to, for me to speak about it, you'd have to define atheism. And because I'm stupid, I would just say atheism is a belief. From
a Dawkins perspective, I mean, he's argued this extensively, and also I think Christopher Hitchens, although he was quite open to the idea that atheism might be a bad position to hold, but he couldn't find a stronger argument, as far as I can remember.
What do you mean bad, though? Define bad.
In what? Sorry, in what sense? A bad.
Well, if you say atheism is a bad position to hold, what do you mean by bad? Do you mean not complete, not real, not true? Does that make it bad if it's not true?
No. Okay, hang on. All right. So,
or is it bad for a human to be an atheist, or not bad for a human to be an atheist?
No, I don't think it's inherently bad to be an atheist. I've got a friend who's an atheist. He'll argue that we are just merely the result of evolutionary processes, right? And going all the way back, I guess, to, I don't know, the Big Bang, or we're all stardust or whatever, okay? And there's no greater meaning. We just die and that's that. And that's a Dawkins position. And he sees beauty still in the world around him, in the flowers and the sunrise and all that kind of thing. But I also see beauty in those things. But he can't intrinsically argue why rape is bad, because he has no moral framework from which to base that on. Or incest. You see, I can. If you're a Christian, if you're a Christian or if you're a Muslim or whatever, you can say, well, I have it here. It's written down in the Holy Scriptures. There's my moral framework. It comes from God. But if you're an atheist, you don't believe in God. So where does that come from? You can't.
Those examples are very easy to prove from a materialist point of view. You don't need to have religion to prove. First of all, you don't need to have religion to prove that evolution, Darwin's, the whole survival of the fittest concept or whatever, is completely false. All you need is good mathematics to prove that from a materialist perspective. Now, that doesn't mean it proves that God exists or intelligent design exists. It doesn't prove that either. But it certainly proves that theory is flawed. And if somebody needs to have scripture to tell them that rape is wrong, then that's a problem.
No, that's not. No. Hang on, that's not quite correct. We all know that. Okay. We all know that that's wrong. But let me ask you a question: do you think that incest is wrong?
Yes.
But okay, why?
Well, psychologically, because it almost invariably, without exception, damages the psychic system of the victim. It destroys a sense of trust, and certainly destroys the power differential between a child and an adult, which is required for the child to nurture and to become fully integrated as a psychic being. As they grow older, they require adults to be trustworthy and not invade their power structure to their advantage. And it does. I mean, there's no question that it does severe damage to a child's psyche to be molested, even if they enjoy it, which physiologically there's a possibility that depending on their age and whatever, their body will respond biologically to it. You get into morals, you're going to run into a lot of that. What is right and what is wrong from a moralistic point of view. You don't need God for that either, really. In my view, we're born knowing. And this is an ancient Egyptian concept of the word ma'at, which is that we so above as below, or as above so below, or whatever it is, where there is an innate knowingness of morality. But morality is a tough one. I mean, Nietzsche went into this big time, and I'm not going to quote Nietzsche because I'm not very well read with Nietzsche's work, but this idea that morality is an individual and is based on context. Like I could say morally I'm not a murderer, but if somebody broke into my house and threatened my wife, I would have no problem murdering them. killing them. Now that's a little different than murder, because murder is premeditated for your own benefit. And that's what the Ten Commandments say. It says, shall not murder. It doesn't say kill, the way everybody loves to say it says kill. Well, it doesn't.
But are soldiers therefore murdering, since what they're doing is it's premeditated?
Ultimately, that's why war is no good, but ultimately true. I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to say each individual, but that is sinful. Yeah, I mean, war is sinful because of that. If you're defending yourself from a marauder.
Just go with me on this. God is a placeholder. All right. So whether you're Christian, Muslim, whatever, you're a believer, as we said earlier, as opposed to just thinking that there's nothing and we're just the result of stardust. Without God, right, there aren't grounds for, let's say, objective morality, right? Only for preference or social convention or let's say opinion or something, okay? Morality in many respects is clearly objective. So like you mentioned earlier, rape, murder, torture, we don't just dislike them. They are legitimately wrong. And we don't even have to try and explain why. They just are. So therefore, could we not say that something beyond human consensus must ground that wrongness? And instead of trying to dodge this by perhaps building ethics on reason or science or something materialistic like that, could we not argue that there is some sort of transcendence or transcendent value in our moral obligations? Sure, that's a word salad and a half.
Well, I'm assuming you're not an atheist.
No, I'm not an atheist. No, because I just don't see the point.
Well, I'm not an atheist either. I have very strong beliefs, whatever you want to call it, whatever word. So it's hard for me to comment on that because I believe that. I believe what you're saying. I do think that certain moral issues, not all of them, but certain ones are, again, innately embedded within us due to a transcendent awareness. Because I believe in that. So, it's easy for me to say that. I'm not quite sure how an atheist would make a comment. I mean, I remember one of the weirdest atheist comments that I heard or read about was explaining why we're moved by a sunset. That we find a sunset inspiring and moves our heart because it indicates that the crops will be good and we'll be able to eat if the sun is like emitting a certain kind of light or whatever. It was all this, again, materialist, explanation for a sense that we generally will apply to an awareness of something greater than ourselves and some kind of unity in the universe of positive intention that is not all just arbitrary or all based on our physical survival. And I think that what you're getting into is related to that. It's like if there is not an objective reason for it, like for believing rape is wrong, then it doesn't really exist as like morality doesn't really exist.
Well, let me jump in there and add.
Yeah.
An addendum. So if morality is something that is just a consequence of evolution, right? What would be the reason to help us cooperate, to help, I don't know, or if it's something that society has agreed on for a very long time, then you could argue that it has no more authority than something like your dress code, because you can just break it, and if you're clever, you can get away with it.
Well, that's the argument, isn't it? I mean, that would be the atheist argument, to say it's a product of evolution as communal integrity of being able to live with one another. You have these certain rules that have evolutionarily been passed down based on cause and effect. But
animals live without it.
Well, but you don't see animals murdering each other either. Of course, there's argument against that too, with this whole thing about dolphins raping each other or whatever. And here's a good one though that I think is in line with what you're talking about. Why is it that if we physiologically develop to a point where we can procreate at 15 or 14 or 13, yet it is immoral for a man who is 21 to have sex with a 14-year-old?
Yeah, I have been asking that question for years. It's not a question you can ask easily because you immediately get put into a box of...
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, no, what are you supporting pedophilia? No. But you're just asking the biological question, why are teenagers ready biologically? They might not be ready upstairs, but why are their bodies ready?
Well, it's not so much why their body's ready. The why is that considered immoral? That's the big why.
And how do they get to the number, I don't know, 16 or 21?
Yeah, that's all cultural. I mean, because there are places in the world where when you're 14, you get married and start having babies.
Right.
The moment you develop.
Let me just say that my kids will not be doing that when they're teenagers.
No. Well, no, because the culture doesn't allow it. The problem, I think, that comes in, this is a touchy subject just from what you said. The problem comes in is that when people judge that natural process to happen, yes, there's a judgment because anybody in the culture knows the law and knows it's wrong. And there's good reasons why it is. I mean, it isn't just because you're physically ready to have sex doesn't mean you should in a culture setting, because the culture is set up in such a way that you don't do that. At least the Western culture, this culture is. But for a man to be attracted, say, to a girl who's 13 or 14 is considered morally wrong, that he's got something wrong in his head. Yes, acting it out, he does, because he knows he's in a system. I mean, just like if I walk into a store and I see a bag of bread and I'm hungry and I go, oh, what the hell? I'll just take it and eat it. It's like I know better to know that I will be arrested for stealing because that's the law. My physiology says I'm hungry and there's food sitting there, so why not eat it? But I'm messed up psychologically because I don't follow the law. But I don't follow it because it's immoral, or I follow it because it's immoral, or it's, I'm getting all mixed up. I follow the law not because it's a moral obligation. I follow it because it's the law. It's what our community has created as a law. And the same thing goes with children. I think it's a little more complicated than that, because I do think that as we go through our development culturally, even, that certain things get kind of hardwired in, not like evolution, but almost like archetypal evolution, that there is something despicable about being attracted even sexually to a young girl. And especially people that have children and whatever. But it's, I mean, this is such a touchy topic. And the culture also, there's no question that because the culture is the way it is, a young girl should not be engaged with an older person sexually for psychological reasons. They're not ready psychologically for that. And that's primarily because of the culture. That's not some evolutionary physiology that takes place there. The power differential is going to affect them, the trust, all of those things. It just isn't supposed to be there.
Yes, the reality, the power differential will always be there.
Well, you're talking about archetypal power differential, and the woman has her share of power over the male as well. So it evens out archetypally. It the sums of both even out. She has X amount of power. He has X amount of power. And in a good relationship that's well formed and whatever.
Psychologically, yes. Yeah, psychologically. In actual fact, I'll argue that psychologically men are a lot more primitive on average.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, that's why we still laugh at fart jokes.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the truth. And if you look at,
there's
if you look at the bell curve,
that.
if you look at the bell curve, if you look at the bell curve, women dominate the majority space. Men are the ones on the fringes, and then we do Red Bull kind of stuff, where we can die. I mean, that is very dumb. Ultimately, if you got a family, but it's
dumb in this current culture. There's a lot of things like that are dumb in the culture. But if you go back a couple of thousand years and you're dealing with people living in the forests and hunting boar and whatever in order to survive, there's the successful hunter is one that takes risks. And if he doesn't cowboy it up sometimes and act like an idiot, he doesn't learn a skill that will make his family survive. So all those things go, what we see in today's culture, obviously we're not hunting boar anymore. But we still do those stupid things, and the culture tells us we're stupid or toxic, a better one.
You mentioned Nietzsche a couple of times, so listen to this.
Don't talk about Nietzsche.
Well, this is what he said. The belief in humanity was itself just a hangover from belief in God. And once God was eradicated, the belief in human beings would follow the same way.
Yeah, I would not argue with that. But this is just going back to what your wife was saying. I mean, it's going back to this idea that what makes us human is very much based on our belief in God.
Yes, our storytelling and our creativity.
Yeah, however you want to frame that. And it's not even, again, I don't like to say, because I ask my clients this all the time, I say, do you believe in a higher power rather than God? God is a bad word these days, because people are very, very, it's very common for people to say, I don't believe in God. But if you frame it a certain way, and even higher power isn't good, because it really isn't a higher power. It's more of an intentional mind. I mean, that's the best way, in my view, to say it. An intentional intelligence, essentially meaning that it is not the universe, and the formation of matter is not arbitrary. That it's not chance. It's actually intended.
Yeah, well, Dawkins, he argues that it's not random.
Oh, does he? Yeah. Well, then what makes it not random? What's doing that in his view? If something's not random, it means it has a...
Yeah, this is the problem with sort of secular humanism in many ways. Those cartoon images, where the character's sitting on a branch of a tree and he's sawing off the branch.
Right.
When he's sawing off the branch. So, like, for example, if you think about this, okay, if morality is a social construct, or it's, I don't know, a consequence of evolution, right? Then there is no morality. Because if the meaning of life is invent your own meaning, then there is no meaning.
Yeah. The morality, I mean, you got to define that too, because what is moral that doesn't have an objective purpose behind it? So give me an example of that. We've been talking about rape and pedophilia and whatever, but there is an objective reason why pedophilia, say, with somebody that is prepubescent, all right, is morally wrong, but it's also objectively wrong because it doesn't have any purpose in it. There's no end story to it that has any meaning to it objectively.
Well, it's self-gratification
in
a very disgusting way. It's self-gratification.
Yes, but that's not good enough. That doesn't have any kind of, it's not immoral from a spiritual point of view. I mean, it is, but if you wipe that out and say there is no spiritual point of view, why is that wrong? It's wrong because it has no meaning. It becomes a pathological, a mentally aberrant behavior because it's self-gratifying at the expense of another being. Now, if you ate children because you were hungry, that's different. That's okay from an atheistic point of view. If you needed to do that in order to survive, where morally you wouldn't. I mean, what's the big thing about people eating each other? There's, I mean, not just children, but anybody. I mean, there was that very, very famous, I can't remember it because there's been a couple of them since, but I know when I was a kid, I think it was in the 60s, that airplane crash where people were like starving or like a certain number of them.
And they started eating one another.
Yeah. And there was such a big to-do about how horrible that was. I was like, and they were already dead. It's not like they killed them to eat them. They were already dead. And it was considered such a horrible thing to have done.
Another very famous atheist thinker, I suppose, is Peter Singer.
Okay.
And he's kind of followed on with that line of reasoning that you were just talking about now. I mean, I think he promotes bestiality and infanticide.
Infanticide.
Yeah. Because basically you're creating your own framework of morality and ethics. Because if it doesn't come from anywhere, then you are inventing it.
Well, you're inventing it due to mental pathology as well. You have to factor that into all of this stuff.
And therefore it's not objective, by the way.
Well, it's not identifiably objective. It is to the individual probably because their objective system is messed up. And I don't know who's done study. I shouldn't even be mentioning this because I don't know anything about it, but like that would stop me. But animals, I don't think they have the same variety of mental illness that humans do, if any. I don't know the research on that. Maybe some of your listeners do, and they can let us know. But humans have such a huge variety of mental aberrations. It's like, and it's not just made up by the pharmaceutical companies. A lot of them are, but just what we live through as beings that are beyond animals, living in tribes or whatever, is so complex that it really does loosen a lot of screws in our systems. And you got to factor that in too, talking about people doing stuff that's immoral. I think out of the box, there's a lot of, just like with animals, there's a lot of things humans do that are abhorrent. Out of the box, I don't think they would. I think they have to have baggage to start doing these things like pedophilia and rape and whatnot.
Well, this isn't really, we haven't really veered, of course. I mean, this is fairly closely linked to your article about the death of creativity, because you also mentioned reductionism and you mentioned people like Richard Dawkins, who is an atheist, and he's a very outspoken atheist. Now, I don't know if you remember a guy by the name of Roger Scruton.
Sounds familiar.
And he argued that secular societies, let me get this right, will increasingly lose the sense of the sacred. And it's, if I'm correct, it's that erosion that would corrode our communal bonds and our shared moral life. So in other words, the atheist reduction of who we are, comes down to nothing but biology or, chemical reactions. And Todd, if you think about it, that is the literal definition of degeneracy. As
Humanity, as a human And I think this is, to me, this is the proof of God, or whatever you want to call it, where I think the atheist, the hardcore atheist, is so off of not understanding that. I know E.O. Wilson, he's also an atheist. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He's an entomologist that's written a ton of books. And there's a recent book, I can't remember the title of it, I think it's one of the last ones he wrote, where he tries to frame, to take philosophy and art and love and all these things that we all attribute to our non-secular selves, our sacred selves, and he tries to rationalize them through this materialist atheistic perspective. And Dawkins does that too, but he really tried doing it in this book. And when you're reading it, it's like the guy sawing the branch off. I mean, it's like you just go, well, if you're right, it's like we might as well be one of the ants you study, because it's like there is no humanness in it. Yet we prove we're human again and again and again with our art and our creativity, whether it be in art or whether it be in building a building, or a cell phone even. I mean, that's all creative output.
Oh,
that's very
right, yeah.
human.
The internet.
Huh?
The internet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just don't think you can do that. I don't think their argument even begins to hold up in any way at all. Now, I think you can strip that from us because it's obvious that we have. It's been stripped, or at least attempted to be stripped of all this. And just like what your wife is saying, this is why we're degenerating, just like what you just said. This is why we're degenerating into a culture that constantly wages war when there's no objective reason to. I mean, there may have been 1,000 years ago more objective reason. Well, we need to have more wheat because we're all dying. Let's go invade this country. That wasn't the main reason why people did. Of course, there's a lot. It's too complicated to go into. But anyway, we're degenerating as a culture. We are accepting things like pedophilia as being a choice, that's big in the news these days, and in psychology, the whole transsexual thing, just on and on. I mean, you could list 1,000 examples of that, and if you read any of my articles, you'll run into them, because that is exactly what is happening. It's like we're degenerating into this biological, consumer-focused creature that has no morality, has no sense of right and wrong, has no common sense. And I think that's intentional.
Transhumanism.
Right, exactly. Well, that is what
transhumanists like the idea of us not being creative.
Lack the idea of
They
us
don't like the idea.
Oh, they don't like the idea of it. Oh, absolutely not. No.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned science and technology basically driving all of this. And science and technology are at the heart of technocracy.
Yeah, have you ever heard of anybody coming up with a chip that you can put in your brain, or even thinking about it, that will make you more artistic, make you more creative, make you a better composer, a better painter? No, it's all about either propagating intelligence, making you the next guy to come up with another chip that'll make you this, or extending your life. That those are all materialist concepts. One has no end to it. It just goes on and on and on until we invent some kind of mechanism that will just kill everybody in one button push and everybody will just drop dead. That's the ultimate in that. Okay. But the transhuman concept primarily is to live forever with no pain. And that's all completely based on materialism and consumerism. That's it. There's no focus on being a better human. There's no focus on being more artistic, more creative, more expression, more meaning, more purpose. That's not in the transhuman. I don't think it is. I mean, maybe you do. Maybe somebody listening does. I've never seen that anywhere in the transhumanist paradigm.
And I don't think those transhumanists, those oligarchs, those globalists are believers. I think they're all atheists. I think they I mean, I think they all believe in nothing other than being chaotic and nihilistic and wanting to exert power and control. And that kind of, again, just makes me want to reiterate the comment, because it sounds like I'm completely dunking on atheists. I've got atheist friends. I'm not saying anything wrong about my atheist friends. I'm talking about the framework, the structure, why it can't inherently explain why something is truly wrong, or why we have an inherent desire for dignity, for example.
No, they just can't go there. I mean, there are two kinds of atheists. I would say probably a lot of different kinds, but just in thinking, there's one that believe in the theory of atheism, essentially the dogma of materialism. They can't deviate from anything that would tear that down. So that's more of a hypothetical. I mean, like E.O. Wilson is like that. If you read any of his work, he's probably one of the most soulful people that ever existed. I mean, he was so in touch with his heart and so in touch with compassion and care and the awe of nature. I mean, just on and on and on. But he refused to go past the materialist cause and effect, arbitrary nature of nature. And that's one kind. I think then there's another that uses it to excuse their evil, essentially. They're the oligarch, they're the power hungry, they're whatever. They'll claim they're religious or believe in God just to get people to pay attention to them. But that's a different kind of thinking. It's not so much that they're sticking to a dogma of materialism. They're more sticking to this refusal that power isn't the only thing worth living for and fighting for and whatever. Then there are the people that are just terrified. They're terrified of dying. They're terrified of because they don't believe there's anything more than the material life. And those are the transhumanists that are trying to prolong life and not see that death is part of it. And that's part of being a human or any animal.
Mm. So therefore, if you truly want to be punk rock, find yourself something to believe in. And by the way, speaking of that, I mean, we spoke about God and I know that you said the source or whatever, right? It's a placeholder. You know, if you're a Christian, you'd say God, but if you're David Icke, you'd say a simulation, something that created everything in which we find ourselves. But basically, it's the opposite of we're just a result of stardust.
Well, we physically might be. I mean, it's really I think the way to reduce that is to, like, say, if you believe that the material world is all that exists, then you are an atheist and a non-believer. And that's about it. I mean, you can refine that and say, oh, God is some benevolent being that sits up in the heavens and can see everybody or anywhere, see everybody and anything, and actually put grace on your physical life here and there or whatever. You can refine it to that degree. But ultimately, it's just believing there is intention. The physical life is not the end all. And I don't mean end all in the sense that when you die, there's an afterlife. I mean, it's like, I don't know if you need to believe that. I think it kind of just says that there's something to our agency, our ability to essentially discern existence, whether it be in the physical body or out of it or whatever.
I mean, what if we were put here by aliens?
Well, then it's turtles all the way down. It's like, who made the aliens? Mm. Okay, how did they come into existence? I mean, that's not a good argument because it very well could be that there's something that created us.
It's the same thing as who created God.
Right. Well, that's the a priori. I mean, that's when you get into time and get into like all this weird stuff that time doesn't, as a linear construct, doesn't really exist that way. That there isn't a beginning, there isn't something before the first domino, that whole a priori concept.
I'm looking at the time, Todd. This has been a really light-hearted conversation.
Yes, it has.
How can I read your article and follow your work?
Shrew Views, which is www.shrew, like the little animal, views, like looking, is my Substack. And I also have a book out that is a bunch of my articles. In the book, you can find that at theviewoftheshrew.com. It's also a website. That's the name of the book. So
a shrew is so cute.
A shrew is so cute. Yes, it is.
It's an adorable little thing. I saw a picture.
Yeah, but they're mean.
I saw a photograph this week that some photographer managed to catch a shrew yawning. It's the cutest little photograph. Yes.
What, do you have it? You got to send it to me. I'll use it.
I think I'll go try and find it. But it was very cute.
Yeah, they can be cute. They're also really ornery boogers, which is good. Good reason why I called ourselves shrews. I didn't know that when I came up with the name. My sister and I did. We were talking about sheep, and I said we got to have something we can call ourselves. So we came up with shrews. But it's very appropriate. So
it's always a pleasure chatting to you, Todd Hayen. Thank you for joining me in the trenches.
Thank you, sir. It's always wonderful to talk.